Hi everyone, I'm Adele Lewis, Community Manager at eSynergy. We're a technology consultancy who build products, platforms and services that accelerate digital business outcomes for our customers. And we're actually delighted to be welcoming one of our customers, HMRC, to today's tech series. For those that are new to the tech series, this is an event that we run on a monthly basis for our technical communities and providing thought leadership and a real chance to learn from other organisations. So today, Ben Conrad, Head of Agile Delivery for MDTP at HMRC, he's going to be examining the role of DevOps and really how they've been able to deliver digital tax services frequently whilst learning from incremental successes and failures. Before I hand over to Ben, just a quick note to say if you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat box and Ben will answer them at the end of his talk. We're going to be recording the session, so this will be made available by email tomorrow. So if there's anything you missed or anything that you want to rewatch, we'll share that with you after. Great. So now I'm going to hand over to Ben to begin. Over to you.
Cool. All right. I think I'm just going to step straight into it then. First of all, just hello, good afternoon, and huge thank you to giving up some time over lunch to join this event. I'll try to ensure that you don't all just wish that you're outside enjoying the lovely, lovely sunshine that we've got at the moment. A quick introduction, I suppose. I'm billed for this event as the Head of Agile Delivery. It's one of the job titles that I've collected whilst doing very similar things at HMRC. Technically, I've moved on from that role reasonably recently. I now have something like Head of Product for MDTP. I really ought to update things like LinkedIn and email signatures and all those other places. So a few things about me. I've been with HMRC for nearly 5 years now, working on MDTP for all that time in various roles. And I'm going to be talking about DevOps at HMRC with a heavy emphasis on MDTP because that's what I know about. One reason for this is that one of the unpaid roles that I have at HMRC is as head of profession for DevOps. I don't get paid for it and I don't do enough for it, quite frankly. HMRC collect acronyms. It's one of the things that we generate ourselves. We don't even need to collect them. I will be using them and apologies if I don't always explain them. MDTP is the multi-channel digital tax platform. I've been here 5 years and I still don't know what the other channels are meant to be. It's entirely unclear to me. I never quite know how much context to give at the start of these talks. My guess is that most of you know what HMRC is. HM, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. We collect taxes and we administer customs to the UK government. I'm guessing everybody has an understanding of what we do. We're responsible for those worrying brown envelopes that you get through your door. I've realized I've put all these numbers on the slide. I haven't actually kind of explained any of them. The number of customers should be kind of obvious. The 2.3 billion transactions is the number of transactions that we have every year through the tax platform itself. And that brings in a big number of money. And there are a lot of zeros in my salary, obviously, but they are the wrong side of the decimal point. HMRC is actually a really big organization. It's a big government department. We do very little policy, but we have a lot of people working on implementing it. And the IT department, these numbers suggest that kind of half the people in the IT department are working in digital. That's really not true at all, because that number of 4,800 is, I believe, the number of civil servants, and the number of people on Slack would include a large number of our suppliers and contractors and the like. For a long time, HMRC has been working to reduce the number of letters that we send out and indeed the number of paper forms that we receive. A big part of that is by enabling our customers, citizens, and businesses in the UK, taxpayers, to do the things they need to do with a digital service. There's a really interesting story about how the government changed its approach and created a digital by default strategy, and moved away from government departments having websites to instead building transactional digital services. I'm not going to do that talk because it's not my story to tell, and it's too long for me to go into here. Many of you are probably already familiar with it, but if you're not, then I really encourage having a look at that link. The GDS blog has got it's just a really interesting thing on how and why they got going. I go to a bit of history on MDTP though. Apologies if you've heard this before from either myself or anybody else. For MDTP, the story starts in 2013. HMRC already had some Java services for doing things like completing your self-assessment. They were hosted on physical servers and struggled every year to meet the demand of SA peak at the end of January. Sorry, SA peak. SA is self-assessment. The biggest key business event or peak of traffic that we see on the platform every year is at the end of January. The British people have got 9 months of the year to do their self-assessment filing, and the majority leave it until the last minute. The new GDS, the Government Digital Service, chose some exemplar digital services to be created across government. I think HMRC had about 7 of those. And the approach taken was very different from anything that HMRC had previously done. And DevOps was at the heart of it. If I'm just I think this is sort of critical. If you wanted to scale the services that we had previously, then, I mean, it was possible to do. Technically, I think they were, scalable, but you had to either buy bigger servers or more of them. Buying things is quite hard. We'd probably have to, raise a purchase order and wait 6 months for that to flow through to Fujitsu or whoever was supplying it, and then they would order it, and then it would finally be delivered, and then we'd actually have to get people to plug in the Cat5 cable and the like, and it never worked, unfortunately. As you can see from Twitter holds the anguished screams of pain for forevermore, and it's something that it was a broken system, really, not really fit for purpose. So it quickly became apparent that these new services that we were building would need somewhere to run, somewhere that had connectivity to the HMRC systems we needed to communicate with, that could scale to meet the demand that I was just talking about, and that would provide tools and functionality that the developers of these new services needed. And the platform was built with DevOps engineers, and it started off in one single team called WebOps. Actually, I think this is before my time, so I'm talking hearsay, but I think we probably had WebOps and PlatOps, and I'll go into a little bit the difference between those. This gives a couple of kind of key dates. 2016 was sort of interesting in that we were multi-active across 2 different cloud providers. Now, technically, that was really quite impressive. We were multi-cloud, and the idea was that if one cloud provider had a problem, then we would switch all of the traffic seamlessly over to the one which was operating fine. The problem was that when we tried to do that during SA peak, we had a cloud provider go down, we switched the traffic across to the other one, and we broke the other one because they couldn't actually cope with the amount of traffic, doubling what we were normally sending there. So in 2017, in something of a hurry, we migrated to AWS, and we've been all in on AWS since then, since the end of 2017. 2019, migrating to Bristol, I mean, it seemed like a big thing at the time. Obviously, this was pre-pandemic, and geography was still important. HMRC has a location strategy, which boils down to please leave London. At the moment, obviously, I think, geography is dead, and we can work anywhere. So the platform was really successful, and it expanded. The WebOps team grew too big, certainly to feed with 2 pizzas, and it needed to be split up. So we had the platform support team who dealt with support requests. Platform operations, as I mentioned just now, were a team focused on the services that ran on the platform rather than the infrastructure of the platform itself, which is almost like splitting up dev and ops, but let's not worry too much about that. In 2017, when I joined, we looked at ways that could further divide the teams, and we created teams that were able to focus on the functionality and the products that they would own. And the key to this idea was that the team building something would then own and operate it. So the team building the telemetry functionality for the whole platform would own and operate that functionality. And likewise, the team who built the tooling for deploying services onto MDTP would continue to be responsible for maintaining that tooling. There was no way that we were going to allow teams to build something and then chuck it over the fence. So these are the teams that we came up with, and mostly they've stayed the same. This is really unfair on Plat UI, by the way, just because they don't quite fit in the picture that I had, but they are a core team for us. So the other significant change to the team that we made at that time, the team, say, building and operating MDTP, was that we got rid of the support team. That's not to say that we got rid of the support function, but we instead spread it across the other teams. So previously, platform support had been a fairly demoralizing place to work. A Jira ticket would come in with a problem from one of the service teams. The team would investigate it, probably do something to fix it, and then move on. But it was often just a sticking plaster. So we disbanded them and gave each platform team responsibility for providing support for their own products. And they hated it. Engineers who'd previously been able to focus, much of their time on building new shiny things suddenly had to spend a lot of time in the weeds fixing things. And for the first few months, it was a huge burden. I think most teams were, if a team was maybe 10 people, they were putting, 2, 3, 4 people maybe purely on support tasks. And that was not popular. But eventually, what we hoped for did happen. It probably took 6 months. But what happened was that longer term fixes were developed and problems were solved forever. And then our users were raising fewer support issues with us. I've been trying really hard not to have a what is DevOps slide, mostly because I'm sure that all of you on this call already know, but also because it's complicated. I think it might be sensible to take a moment to discuss what we mean by DevOps, because the term is mangled in all sorts of different ways by different people. For me, the most important thing is you build it, you run it. It's something we're reasonably good at on MDTP and really bad at in lots of other parts of HMRC. They often, in some areas, there's just no attempt to try and do it. For us on MDTP, a critical advantage is that we are running in the public cloud. We're in AWS. And while large parts of HMRC's corporate estate is trying to move to the cloud in one form or another, MDTP is only ever operated there. And we don't ever create resources manually or use the AWS console. There's an exception to everything I'm saying, by the way, but let's stick to the main. Everything that we build is defined in code. If we scale any infrastructure, we do so by making a change to the code that defines it. And that's what DevOps engineers are doing on MDTP. They're writing code to define infrastructure. And they're automating everything that it makes sense to automate. The other block of text on this slide, I don't know who wrote it. I mean, who refers to development operations engineers? Support for the development and operation officer. I mean, it's just a truism. Anyway, it's the DDAT, what's that? The Digital Data and Technology Framework on gov.uk. It is their definition of the DevOps role. They don't define it in a way that I find particularly useful, and I find it particularly difficult when trying to recruit against it, actually. They have another one called infrastructure engineer, which is actually better aligned, I think. One idea of DevOps is obviously merging development and operations. And while that's something we do within the context of the platform, at the same time, I guess there's something of a barrier to it across HMRC Digital. The people writing services that run on MDTP are the same people who run the services on MDTP, but they're also software developers. They're not DevOps engineers, because MDTP takes away the operations side and abstracts it away. In some ways, that's against DevOps principles, I suppose. But from my perspective, having a pure DevOps offering where everyone is responsible for their code and the environment it runs in, it isn't really scalable, and it's not desirable for us. But that said, we work really, really closely with our customers who we say are these service teams. They are multidisciplinary agile teams. And whether we're working in a global pandemic or not, a key aspect of that for us is Slack. We have a culture on Slack which is really open, really helpful, and often quite funny. It gives direct access between the platform and our users. And I think this is something that maybe it's a little bit unique. I mean, I'm sure it's not unique in terms of the setup across government, but what I mean is that often if you're writing a service running on MDTP and your users are citizens of this country, then you don't have this medium where you can chat to them every day and find out what their problems are. And we're really lucky to have that. A few other things just on this slide, that everything is self-service. What I mean is that if you are a developer working on a team building a service on MDTP, all the things that you might need to do, you can do yourselves. You don't have to fill in any forms. You don't have to ask permission for stuff. You can just get on and create your repository in GitHub. You can define the pipeline that you need to deploy things into the environments and just go ahead and do it. We've also bring your own device. That's really important to us. And we used to have a production release form. So if you wanted to release something into production, you had to fill out a form, and then somebody on the platform side would click the button in Jenkins. We got rid of that. You can deploy to any environment anytime you want. We are confident in the testing that is done on the services that things won't break. And we have about 350 deployments into production every week. There's thousands into the pre-production environment, if you count those. I think we must be doing something right, because the approach we take is now a case study in the second edition of the DevOps Handbook. In particular, this case study is with regard to the role that MDTP played in enabling the economic response of the UK government to the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't want to talk about COVID. I'm really, really bored of COVID. My wife's a doctor and she's really bored of COVID. But I'm really proud of what we were able to achieve. And it impressed people like Tim Berners-Lee, who put out a tweet on the day that we launched the job retention scheme, furlough. We dealt with a vast wave of traffic, and everything stayed up. Obviously, as you can see, it did not impress Jim Tamworth, the one comment on this blog put out by IT Revolution is that we're grossly incompetent. What can you do? So today we're hosting about 250 different digital services on MDTP. That means we need to be reliable and resilient, and we need to ensure that we're not carrying a lot of technical debt. And it's by using DevOps engineers to, write the code and testing that occurs before anything gets changed, pipelines to automate that testing and the whole process, and really great visibility through logs and metrics that we're able to provide a platform that is relied upon by so many other areas, delivery groups within HMRC. Because it's all defined in GitHub, every bit of infrastructure is defined in code, it's all auditable in a way that the infrastructure has never previously been. I realize on here I said we've got 5 environments and there's actually only 4 shown. In fact, there's probably 6 or 7 environments. It's just not all of them are used by different teams. So it's, how you count them. We've got about 1,200 microservices. I think there are about 950 or so currently in production. I could talk about the sort of microservices architecture that we use and why and how that's set up, but that's a different talk and I haven't got those slides. And if you want to ask any questions about that, then I'm very, very happy to go into it. But I haven't done for this. So I sort of wanted to talk a little bit about DevOps and other bits of HMRC, which is something I'm learning more about. There are many government departments that are building and operating platforms in AWS, in Azure or Google Cloud. They're using DevOps engineers to do so, be they civil servants or partner organizations delivering services to departments. The DDAT framework, Digital Data and Technology, defines the role of a DevOps engineer, but not in a way that I entirely agree with. Within HMRC, there are lots of people working within the DevOps profession, but the approach taken can differ quite widely. I mean, actually, there is more in common than that which divides us. But for HMRC, this means that it's looking at legacy systems and potentially just lifting and shifting them into cloud infrastructure as is. And when they have new projects, there's often a pattern where a new environment is set up rather than looking for the common platform approach. So MDTP is really only hosting the front ends for digital services. We have back-end microservices as well, but we don't store a lot of data on MDTP, and mostly we will be providing the connectivity through to downstream systems. As new downstream systems develop which aren't internet facing, they often want control of a sort of end-to-end journey, and they're looking to, say, set up their own bit. And there might be reasons why that's a good idea. And I'm well aware that I'm really biased, but I think the common platform approach has got huge benefits. I mean, one of them is that we're quite cheap, really. If you look at the economy of scale that we're able to provide, we don't charge any of the other parts of HMRC for using MDTP. And we have this golden path. We have a mature platform and we have ways of doing things and patterns established. And I'd say for 95% of services on MDTP, that works really well. But, it's naive to think that there isn't a downside, and other parts of HMRC are not yet completely brought into it. And it is a single point of failure. If the platform goes down, then every HMRC digital service is now unavailable. And that includes things which are, quite critical. And potentially, you're talking about lorries stuck in ports and that sort of thing, because they're not able to fill in the paperwork they need to move. I really want to mention apprentices. We have previously had a few challenges with this because we needed to bring in software developer apprentices and then break it to them gently that we were more focused on DevOps. That has challenges in terms of giving them the opportunities they need for their portfolios and things. If they need to do a piece of front-end work, we might not have a lot of opportunity for that. Actually, I worked with my predecessor, Andrew Shepherd, really trying to solve the big problem here. And he did an awful lot of work to really drive this on. And he managed to get a new DevOps apprenticeship standard created. And what that means is that we're now able to bring in people as DevOps. And we're working with a training provider who's able to front load their training so that when they actually turn up to work on our teams, they have a sort of, baseline understanding of what we're doing. And then it can work more like sort of traditional apprenticeship where they're learning on the job. There were a lot of people who doubted that this was anything more than window dressing, and that we would make a success of it. But actually, and not least because of really great support from suppliers like eSynergy and others that we work with, we've made a really big success of it. As I say, there are about 80 people working on the platform teams, and 20% of them are engineers who are former apprentices or current apprentices. Actually, that number is slightly bigger now. And we also have additional civil servants in team lead roles. So we've got a really good mixture of civil servants in those team lead roles, kind of defining what we're going to be doing, and then civil servants and people from suppliers helping to actually implement it. The culture that we have on MDTP is hugely important to me, and it's easy to think that it's something that just exists and you can take it for granted. The truth, of course, is that a lot of people put in a lot of effort with constant gardening to maintain and improve the culture. It's another benefit, I think, that we get from working with a mix of suppliers. We get the advantage of experienced people who've worked in a wide range of different places, both public and private sector. And we ask them to all work together and focus on solving interesting problems. And by using agile methods and with a DevOps practice, I think we succeed. But the culture goes beyond that of just having people who are happy to be here. It's also, we get people who put in the effort to really make it a great place to do that work. Being remote adds additional challenges to that, I think, but with the effort, we found it is possible to achieve. And having suppliers who are motivated to do things, even just organizing events like this, it really all helps. This is the last slide. And I'll go through the points on it. The market for contractors seems to be quite similar to the housing market at the moment, kind of dysfunctional. The fact that people expect to be able to work with an awful lot of flexibility is a challenge for us. It's not insurmountable, and we are, I think, providing a lot more flexibility than we did pre-pandemic, but we need people to be within the geographical borders of the UK, and if we ask people to come to the office, then we for a team day or something, then we expect them to make the effort to do that. Breaking down barriers in HMRC, we have a challenge because our tool set and our ways of working within HMRC Digital differ from the rest of the organization, and we don't want to change either our ways of working or our tool set. It's an ongoing struggle. Commercials are always a challenge. It seems to be really, really difficult to buy anything at the moment. But it appears that our mixed supplier teams are going to be quite difficult to maintain in the future. And that, I think, poses a different problem for us. Maintaining freedom. Yeah, a big part of my job is protecting the freedoms that we have to operate in the way that we do, and that's fine. I used to have hair. I've been doing it for nearly 5 years now, and having to fight the same battles over and over again can get really, really tedious. And there seems to be quite a lot of that going on. Building vision, yeah. Finally, this is something I'm grappling with at the moment. I think MDTP is really successful, but that in itself poses a challenge when you're, talking about and trying to walk the walk of continuous improvement. I never want to be resting on our laurels. So trying to find the next thing to focus on is a bit of a challenge in itself. And that really is the last slide. Sorry, so Adam asked, are there technical reasons that you can't support microservices built in other JVM languages other than Scala on the platform? There is somebody who knows the platform. Yes and no. Mostly no, there are no technical reasons. Fundamentally, what we're running on the platform is, we use the Heroku slug builder model, and it's a JVM slug, and it's running on a JVM, and we could use any language. What you wouldn't get is an awful lot of the tooling that we've built up around that, an awful lot of the libraries, the integration with things like Government Gateway, and all of our deployment pipelines are all based on there being Scala. But it's not really the technical challenge, which is why we haven't broadened it out. It's something that we've considered in the past and will probably continue to consider. And I suspect in 5 years' time, MDTP, if it still exists, is not going to be a Scala-only platform. But it would be a significant shift in how we operate. And I think that it would bring really big challenges to the organization as a whole, because at the moment, because everything is following these defined patterns and everything is written in Scala with the Play framework, we are able to hand over the support of services to a live services team, and they kind of know what they're going to be getting. I think we risk losing that. Certainly if we had a free-for-all of, write it in whatever language you want, or even if we just limited it to JVM languages, write it in Java, write it in Clojure, whatever. I mean, that would have a really big problem for the live support model that we have. Not that I'm a big fan of the live support model that we have, but I think there are lots of people across government, across HMRC, who, would like to buy software on a CD, labeled SA filing 2021, and you put it in your machine and you install it, and then, that's it, it's done. But that's not how it works. It's a subscription model. You have to have people supporting these things and doing the upgrades. And we would more than double the challenge there, I think, if we opened it up to other languages. I hope that answers it, but please do come back if you want me to go into more detail. Sorry, Alex, was HMRC already using Agile when you adopted a DevOps approach? I've been trying to find ways to convert standard waterfall, fixed scope, fixed price contracts into more flexible and ultimately more successful endeavors. Do I have any suggestions? Back away. We adopted Agile and DevOps around the same time. I say DevOps, I think, is really it went hand in hand, and it was kind of back to the whole GDS revolution in the way that digital services are provided. It was a sea change, and it wasn't that we asked people within HMRC to do something a bit differently. We largely set up something new, a bit of a skunk works, and I'm not sure that it's had the success that maybe it was first envisioned it should. I think HMRC Digital, for example, has been, really, really successful in what we've done. But I think the intention was that agile ways of working and DevOps and those sorts of modern software development practices would spread like a virus through the rest of the IT department within HMRC, and it would, infect, and best practice would be picked up everywhere. And that has not happened. There are pockets of it, and it's a bit of a slow burn, and it might get better. There are signs of things being hopeful, but fundamentally, HMRC still supports agile and waterfall projects, and when we try and combine the two, bad things happen. And I think a lot of that comes down to vested interests, and there are a lot of those, and HMRC has a long history of long, difficult contracts, which is probably why I find the commercials process so difficult to work with. Sorry, I failed to answer your question. I've just complained about the situation I've got. I think that, if you are trying to introduce Agile into a new place, you have to start small. You have to pick something that, you can deliver on rapidly, and you have to showcase how it's been much, much better than it would have been if you tried to do it a different way, and then gradually expand from there. I think if you try and boil the ocean, you're never going to win. Colin, how much resistance do you face in management and traditional architecture to convince them of the benefits of this vision? Depends which aspect of the vision, and it depends on the people I'm talking to. There are lots and lots of challenges with the connectivity through to back-end systems. We have enterprise architects who have blueprints, some of which are 10 years old or more, and trying to find the way to get those changed is very difficult. And it's not because, they are awful people who are trying to block us. It's because their job is to ensure consistency in the approach that HMRC takes in how we build IT systems. And that's entirely valid. And I, understand their concern that if we just let everybody do whatever they want, then we'll end up with, an unholy mess. And it's very similar to what I was saying in my first answer about, why we only support Scala at the moment. It's massively hypocritical for me to say, this is my pattern, you have to follow it, and then argue viciously against any other pattern that anybody else tries to force on me. And yet, I'm quite two-faced, and that's what I spend my time doing. So, I don't know, to give an example, we have at the moment a front-end service in MDTP, which is talking to a back-end, which is outside of HMRC. It's a kind of sister department. And it works fine. It's Azure, I think, that it's talking to, with fronted by Azure API Manager, and it all works fine. And that's being moved. They're upgrading their back end, and it's going to become hosted within HMRC's estate. But the API Manager fronting it is going to be exactly the same. And so rather than just having a simple mutual TLS connection to it, the architects have decided that we need to have, a hop from MDTP through some firewalls, through an integration layer, which is not doing anything because we know we integrate exactly fine at the moment. So and then through more, WAFs and firewalls, which are in the wrong place and not doing anything useful, and finally talking, and it's just, rather than a simple single hop, they are introducing this complexity, which is going to make it about 8 different handoffs, I think, between different systems. And it's crazy. And I haven't yet convinced them not to do it, but I'm hoping that I will. Sorry, again, not really focused on answering the question. How much resistance do you face? A lot, often. But that's my job, is trying to convince people. And if I'm not able to, it's not because we're not succeeding, it's because I'm not doing a good enough job of convincing them. Building a vision of what to do next, any directions, trends you could share. What to say on this? I think we are successful, and it's quite hard to come up with a vision that really inspires people if you are just saying, well, we want to be a little bit cheaper and a little bit more efficient and a little bit better than what we're doing at the moment. I mean, you can't sell that, can you? Well, I can't. I'm a terrible salesperson. So I think that's not said the teams aren't doing really interesting, really important work. It's just that, it would be nice to have something better to hang it on. In terms of what we do next, I don't know. It might be broadening out and moving to possibly, I think we'd take baby steps, probably wouldn't ditch Scala, but maybe look at other frameworks than Play, and have that as a big thing. We don't currently make any use of Spot instances on AWS, and if we did, then we could probably save some money. So I think that's something that we could potentially do. Yeah, there are a few things, but in terms of directions and trends, no. I'm not a very trend-driven person. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to leave that there. I'm not sure I've answered it very well. Rishi, hi Rishi. Do you remember what life was like pre-AWS? Did the platform break? Yeah, it did. I think that it was inevitable when you're building something new that, of course, things are going to break. And when I joined, we were using two different cloud providers, both UK-based. It wasn't AWS or Azure or one of the giants. And mostly, it was well architected, it was well run, and it worked pretty well. And considering, the state of things at the time, I think it was pretty good. But there were still outages, certainly. Mostly relatively short, but there were a lot of people who were quite scarred by ones which had happened previously. So I think it's been a story of continuous improvement in terms of the reliability, and I think that AWS was a bit of a step change in that, certainly. But we have also suffered outages with AWS. They're never the complete outages that you kind of would like, because then things would automatically flip in and probably divert traffic away from the problem. They're always messier than that. But yeah, AWS has helped. But I think overall, the maturity of the platform has improved, and things have got better all the way. Adam, do you see any near-term opportunities to host more full-stack services on MDTP? And is this part of your vision? So there are a couple of challenges here. One is with HMRC policy, which it's a bit more nuanced than this, but it basically boils down to thou shalt not master data on MDTP. It's something that we had to do for the COVID services, because we knew that with the traffic that we were getting, we had to have the data we were going to need on the platform in order to make it efficient enough for us to be able to serve the traffic that we knew was coming. So there is precedent for doing it, but there's still a policy which says that we can't. But I'm not trying to build an empire. I certainly don't think that HMRC should run, all of their services on MDTP. I think, you need a bit of a mix. But there are definitely use cases where, you're potentially looking at building a new backend, and why wouldn't you host it on MDTP? It would be crazy to put it anywhere else. So I would like there to be other opportunities for full stack services. But I'm not trying to suggest that, you know, everything should be on MDTP by any means. Colin, why Jenkins? Why not? In all honesty, I mean, it is, of course, a legacy decision. If you were building a digital tax platform now, I'm not sure you'd use Mongo as your database. I'm fairly sure you wouldn't use Scala as your language for services, and you probably wouldn't start with Jenkins. They've served us relatively well. I mean, it works, but maybe that could be our you know, next big thing is get rid of Jenkins. There are lots of things I dislike about Jenkins. The permissionless model is not very granular or easy to work with. There's various other bits that, you know, are a bit yucky. But for the way that we use it, it serves a purpose and it works, and that's okay. I think, sorry, just one more thing on that is that the individual technology choices are less important to me than having a single standard that we use. Jenkins may not be the newest, shiniest, most wonderful thing. Scala may not be the language that you choose for hosting microservices these days. But it's more important to us that we have a standard that everybody is using, and that consistency is actually a big part of what's made the platform successful. That's me done, unless anybody quickly comes up with more questions.
Great. Well, thank you for everyone for I guess, joining today. And once again, thank you so much, Ben, for speaking and sharing those insights with us. Before everyone goes, I just want to tell you about our next event, which is our Be Equal session. This is an event dedicated to balance, being empowered and equal, on the 25th of April. Just over lunch, same again, we're going to be hearing from, this time, the technical director, Sarah Wells, about the things that the Financial Times did that really made a difference to impact diversity and inclusion within the engineering team. So please come along and join us. The details will be shared after, along with the recording from today. And we'd also love to hear your feedback from today's session. I think this will really help us shape future tech series. So, and also if you want to get involved, please do reach out to me directly. We're always looking for interesting stories and insights to share with our community. So yeah, that's all from me. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and thank you once again to all.